I'll go ahead and tag them on Twitter on the live.
Okay, cool. Doo-doo-doo-doo. All right, looks like we are live at both places. Just give me a second. Let's get some people to join in. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up, DCN? I'm still trying to find our Substack live. Kyle, if you see it, let me know. I don't know if we're going live there. That's okay. It gives everybody a little bit of time to join. Got a couple of viewers on Twitter. Got a couple of viewers here, but I can't find the main page. And that is not making me happy. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, I got a couple people there. Midday. Let's see if anybody shows up. Everybody comes in, but we'll get started. What's up, everybody? Matt here, Daily Crypto News. We got Kyle over there up on the, I don't know where it is in your screen, but it's going to be the top left. But we also have two people here from two different projects. We have Drew from Camp and Nitya from Para Wallet. And we're going to learn about those. I'm going to ask some probably either ignorant or hopefully thoughtful questions so we can get to the bottom of what they're building and give the education to you so you can pay attention to these two projects. Let's start with a big high level of what is Para, Nitya.
Thanks for having me on. So Para builds a wallet infrastructure. So we basically make it really easy for apps to onboard users with just an email or social login. So a user doesn't need to download a separate wallet, manage a seed phrase, any of that. What's even kind of more beyond that is that the user can use that same wallet across apps. So the same way that you'd single sign on with Google or log in with Google, you can now log in across various apps and use that same underlying embedded wallet. So you never need to deal with any of the kind of rough edges on UX around crypto and self-custody. And then we're working with the Camp team on the Camp ecosystem wallet, which I'm sure we'll hear more about later.
Love that. So the first thing that comes to mind when I'm listening to you talk about, being able to log in anywhere and without the worry of private keys is security. It's about custody. It's about ownership. Can you just talk about that a little bit? And how am I as secure if I'm not dealing with private keys?
Great question. So Para's infrastructure is still fully non-custodial. So it's non-custodial because the user sets up a 2 of 2 MPC or multi-party computation wallet. What this means is that you have one share that is held by Para and one share that's held by the user and protected by a passkey. And further, there's a recovery mechanism so that if the user loses their passkey, they can always kind of reinstate access to that wallet. So it's fully recoverable, but still the user is the only person who can ever initiate transactions, ever control the wallet. Further, actually even versus a lot of other embedded wallets out there, Para is fully censorship resistant. And so what that means is that even if Para were to, let's say, have offline servers for a couple of minutes, a user could still access their wallet. And so we pride ourselves on holding the same standard of ownership, censorship resistance, of interoperability as you would get with a private key in your mobile or extension wallet, but just bringing that form factor down so that the ease of use is much more similar to Web2.
Okay, so Drew, I'm gonna get to you. I swear, man.
No, you're good. You're good. I love Para too.
She's so super interesting when she says some of these things because I'm a skeptic. I've been in the crypto space for a long time. I've been burned more times than I've won, and a lot of these different things. And so, my first question, I have two questions that came out of that. The first one is going to be, is this consumer facing or is this business facing? That's the first question, which you can go in that a little bit. Second is if no matter if it's consumer or business, you're going to have this recovery aspect of it. You hold half, hold half. We've heard about that kind of security in the past. The famous Winklevi said they took their private keys and they put it in different banks in different places. If you lose one and you still can recover, what's the point then? And then is that not a point of failure? It's kind of like a two-factor or some kind of point of failure. And the third question I have is censorship resistance. I know this is a lot, so bear with me. How can you be censorship resistant and how can you claim to be if people can come get you? That's the whole thing about Satoshi Nakamoto is nobody can get the CEO. Somebody can go get Vitalik. Somebody can go get Anatoly Yakovenko, and somebody can go get you. How is it censorship resistant?
Yeah, great question. So why don't we start with the first one, which is basically how people use Para. So we have a set of developer SDKs and work with applications and protocols. So what we'll be chatting more about is our work with the Camp team on the Camp ecosystem wallet. If you go to any of the awesome apps built on Camp, you'll see that you can sign in with your existing MetaMask wallet, your Rainbow wallet, but you can also sign in with a Google login or your email address. That experience is powered by Para. So we're the infrastructure underneath powering this experience. Then as for your second question around really recovery, censorship resistance, all of this, we think about onboarding as something that is progressive. Step one is so actually taking a step back, before kind of we existed or embedded wallets existed, step one, if I wanted to do anything on chain, I have to go download a wallet. I have to go write down 12 words of a seed phrase. I have to go make sure that's held somewhere safely. And that's before I even kind of did step one of playing the game that was why I landed on that website. And so in compressing that onboarding experience and getting people into the reason that they're even kind of interacting with the blockchain to begin with, you end up kind of taking out and decoupling the different guarantees of a wallet. And so what you can do with Para is you can get to a point where a user has both of the shares, they have their private key, they have basically everything that they need that's exactly the same as that user that first had to sign up by downloading an app first, but they've gotten into that game and played it much faster, and hopefully they've had a faster experience to getting value from being on chain. And so the way that this works is step one is a user creates a wallet. Step two is a user sets up a passkey to sign transactions on that wallet. And those two are required steps. Step three is a user gets their backup, their recovery secret in case they were to lose their passkey. And then step four is a user gets a copy of Para's key material and is fully self-sovereign and fully censorship resistant. Some users go through these steps all at once. And this is really dependent on the user's preferences as well as customer preferences and how they want to toggle it. Some users go through this entire onboarding process in a few minutes. And for some users, it's more of a gradual process. Maybe they have less than $1 worth of assets in that wallet. They're just using it to play a game. And it's only when maybe the value in that wallet really spikes and goes up that they set up some of these more like censorship resistant steps. So we kind of offer that whole journey still, but we kind of leave it up to a user and an app on when and how to traverse those steps.
Understood, Drew. I know, 9 minutes, man. I'm sorry. Drew,
You're good. You're good.
Tell us about Camp.
Sure. So Camp is a purpose-built layer one blockchain focused on the intersection of IP and AI. Our core thesis and our belief behind is pretty simple. One, the convergence of IP, AI, and blockchain is inevitable. You're already seeing creators getting screwed. You saw the whole CVO Gilby thing a couple months back. Similar things have happened with Drake in the weekend, and soon it's going to be impossible to tell what's an original piece of work, what's a derivative, how are people creating value, does that monetary value flow back to the original creator or not? And there's just going to be an attribution nightmare. When you look at what blockchain is at its core, it's a ledger to be able to track, how different stakeholders have interacted with each other, and it's really kind of the perfect technology for tracking the original attribution of pieces of IP. The second piece, when you look at where IP or where AI is headed, The biggest moat is going to come from the data layer. Everything that has been on the internet has already been scraped. So going forward, how are new models, new agents going to win? They need unique forms of data. And so essentially at Camp, we want to marry both of those two things. We want to allow it extremely easy for people to tokenize IP in the broadest sense of the world. So not only creative works, but also data. And on the flip side, we want to make it very easy for agents, LLMs to take that existing IP and then train and create new pieces of work or however they want to use that data. And then all of the monetary value flows back to the original, IP providers or data holders.
So this is something that's been talked about for a long time about IP on the blockchain, IP data. Now we have AI and AI works that are already scraped the internet. That IP is already out in the ether. These models already learned all they can learn and assimilated all that data already. So now I guess what you're talking about is new works made in the, I guess, day zero going forward. And day zero is the we'll call it the event of ChatGPT hitting the market and going like, hey, we took all your shit. So is that what you're talking about? And then what does that look like? And then what? And then next question. Sorry, my next question is once you're making derivatives of said work, I mean, what does IP really mean in that point? Because that's when the judge and like humans come in to interpret what IP really is. Are you actually stealing, Queen's, song Vanilla Ice because you just said it went dun 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 dun. And that's where the interpretation come in. Does that really work on a blockchain?
Yeah, great question. I would say, in terms of like IP, it can be day zero or it can be someone that has an IP and just wants to like actually tokenize it. And what that actually looks like in practice is, let's say you're going to like a music app, for example, built on Camp. You can directly within the application level upload the song and tokenize it. And then a good example is, let's say someone wants to leverage that piece of work, create new pieces of music with an agent, and then sell it again. That's kind of how we're tracking from one piece to another. Will you repeat the second question? Sorry.
I guess how do you make the interpretation of what does IP mean?
What does IP mean?
Yeah, so when it's so literal, when you got IP on the blockchain.
Great question. I would say that's a key nuance. We're not necessarily trying to be the arbiter of what is a piece of IP or a good piece of IP versus a bad piece of IP. We're really the marketplace. So the person determining whether or not that is a good piece of IP is really going to be the remixer, the agent, the LLM.
Gotcha.
I'll ask this too. Can you speak to the importance of provenance there and why that is so important? I think this goes to Matt's question of the like day zero and understanding like when things are created and how important that is and how you can draw that line. And with Camp, you'll be able to draw that line through to the wallet level is with Para.
Exactly. Perfect. And we can jump into the Para piece in a bit. But exactly, if someone creates a piece of work, an agent remixes it, creates another piece of work, and you're almost just kind of stacking pieces of IP. And let's say the final piece of IP someone wants to purchase, with the blockchain, you can actually track that flow of transactions. So again, someone purchased it with an ETH or USDC rather, it goes all the way back to the original IP creator.
That's super interesting of having it stacked and the idea of just kind of like layering IP and actually getting everybody involved with that, no matter how you're remixing it or what you're doing with the IP. I guess what's the real world of that? Like, look, you said the marketplace. So I don't know how this works, and I'm just going off of what you said, but you said you have this marketplace where you're doing this IP, but like, how does that actually translate into maintaining that IP outside of your marketplace? Like, and what do you envision like for IP in the future? Is this like a building block for IP in the future that you're trying to look for? Like saying like, hey, let's integrate everything in the future that is going to be digital into something that looks like this, and let's try to figure out how that works through law and case law and it's a big question.
Yeah. I can walk through another example. Yeah, down the road, perhaps we're tokenizing everything. I think the other example is, I've talked a lot about like creative works. It can also be data. So let's say someone wants to tokenize, or rather, let's say you have a great Twitter account and you're creating all these tweets. People think you're very funny. You built a good following. Now I'm new to Twitter, but I want to take Matt's tweets. You've tokenized like your IP from all of your Twitter history. And then I can use that to train an agent to then basically create tweets in your tone of voice. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it could be the broad gamut of, IP data, eventually maybe case law and whatnot down the road. But
I guess what and again, I'm just exploring this from because one of my questions that I always get asked on the podcast, and this is always, I guess if you came up in blockchain and crypto in like the 2015, 16, and 17, 18 era, like that's all you talked about was what can we do on the blockchain, you know?
mhm,
And then we kind of moved away from that to NFTs, memes, meme coins, number
right,
go up, all that stuff. And a lot of the utility has kind of left the conversation. The bettering humanity, the making
right,
things
right.
more democratized, the controlling your data and all that stuff. It's not in the conversation like it was before. So I guess what I'm really asking is if the listeners of ours and the readers of ours
Mm.
is looking at this and they say, well, what is the blockchain for, and what do you imagine the world of IP and blockchain looking like?
Like why? Why as a creator should I care about this?
Why should I care, and why don't we
Yeah,
just use an AWS server, or why
yeah,
don't we just put it in a
great
contract?
question. Great question. It's really funny. Like I got into space like really hardcore back in like 2021 in NFTs, and creators were jumping in hand over feet because there was this whole piece of royalties and being able to track after something was sold and sold and sold and whatnot. So
And
it's
then
this
they
real
exit.
problem.
They
Exactly.
like,
Then
yeah,
they exit and then people left.
yeah.
So there really needs to be a real problem that this technology is solving if we're trying to bring new participants in. And I think we're just going to see more and more cases of creators getting screwed where someone creates this awesome piece of work, leverages it, sells it, and the original creator doesn't get rewarded. And so if we can really teach people about how important blockchain is and really what it is, it's a ledger. We can get people to really create more and more and put these pieces of work on the blockchain.
I think Taylor Swift is kind of a very good analog for this on somebody who did not have control of her own artistic work. And it
Hmm.
took her years to claw it back. And I think it was, I mean, I'm not a Swiftie and don't follow, but I think I
Couple
saw
weeks ago.
it was only in the last like
Yeah.
month or two that she finally got it all back. And it took her like almost a decade. Um, and I think that's exactly the point here is that you see this happening all the time. And there was even the issue with, when Trump was thinking of banning TikTok, what all these creators were going to do because they don't own the platform. They don't own any of the content that they've produced on that platform. And so
Exactly.
that's kind of the problem that you're looking to solve, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Chappelle went through that as well. I mean, we do hear about it a lot of times. People buying back their royalties for their songs. It's a very interesting conversation. So, how do you guys work together? What is the para and camp relationship here?
Sure, I can fill in a little bit. So, can or rather, Pair is powering our ecosystem wallet. We did a lot of research around who we wanted to partner with, looked at all the different embedded wallets, and ultimately decided on Para. And Nitya touched on this a little bit, but stepping back to what I was talking about earlier, in order for the magic of like IP and blockchain and connecting all of your different apps and apps rather, your identity, you need to be able to bring your identity and assets from one app to another app to another app. And very easy to do with an EOA, with MetaMask and whatnot. But if you look at today's embedded wallet landscape, if I go to a music app and I create a wallet with my email address or Twitter, and I go to another application that also has perhaps a different embedded wallet provider, use my email address or Twitter, I have two disparate identities, and I'm then unable to connect basically the assets that I've made on both of those. And the magic of Para is they have what they call a cross-app embedded wallet. So I'm able to use the same Twitter, Google address on every single app, but also every single ecosystem outside of Camp. So it also helps with like liquidity components as well.
Lydia, you got anything to add to that? I mean, Drew, he took his 9 minutes. You got your 9 minutes. I think he's actually.
No, no. I think I just basically building on what Drew said. I think when you think about Camp and this notion of putting IP on chain, there's a notion that what's on chain and who puts it there is of utmost importance, and being able to preserve those linkages, not only within the app that people happen to be in, but kind of moving beyond that. I think curation is something that really enabled kind of the last wave of tech to take off, where you can actually build a moat around having better recommendations, having better notions of identity and who a user is as they're coming into a product. Crypto's superpower is that we can do that not only within one app, but across a whole ecosystem. So when someone goes to the second app on Camp, their experience can be that much better because you already know, okay, this user owns this IP, this user put this on chain. Let me show them this differentiated experience versus another. So you're able to actually build much stronger, much stickier experiences. And I think a lot of what the Camp team has been doing, I think really shows that, where the second that something important is on chain, identity, cross app, like interoperability, like a lot of these features just become more and more important. And so I think it just like speaks to the work that Camp is doing, that we're starting to already see sort of multiple teams within the ecosystem, which I'm sure Drew can speak more to, starting to build on top of each other. And you're already starting to see some of that remixing happen in real time. And so making sure that even someone who signs in with Google has that same experience that someone who has had MetaMask for 5 years has.
That's
Exactly.
super interesting. You have anything to add to that, Drew?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, going back to the original piece where if we want to really encourage creators that have never explored the blockchain to upload pieces of IP to protect themselves, we need to make that onboarding process extremely easy. And Para obviously does that.
So when you're talking about uploading IP, what stops anybody from uploading somebody else's IP? And then now that it's on chain, why don't I just own it?
Good question. Good question. I think it goes back to the original piece that I was saying earlier, where we're not necessarily saying this is, let's say
You're not the
Magnus
arbiter. It's not my
We're
problem.
not exactly, but the marketplace will really determine that. And I think we're seeing a lot of interesting technologies around like zk TLS being able to prove with your Web2 identity that you're the actual creator that is bringing something on chain. And so if you're able to actually verify that you are the real creator that has brought something on chain, the marketplace will then pay a little bit more for your piece of work versus the one that kind of looks like yours IP, but not actually the real creator.
So how would you do that? Would that be something like a hanging with Chainlink sort of like Oracle system of connecting the two, or?
Exactly. And we're actually building some similar stuff as well. We have Spotify's private SDK, surprisingly. So we're able to track a significant amount of data that most labels, artists can't get, including like verifying if you're an actual artist. Can also track like the songs that users are streaming, the amount of songs that are rather playlists being saved and whatnot. So very much in the weeds data on all things Spotify. So yeah, can basically allow someone to upload their Spotify profile more or less and verify that they are the real Matt or the real Kyle uploading this song on chain.
I have two more questions, but first let's see if Kyle has any more. He says, was that a wag of a finger?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So just to expound on like what does the future look like, and again, I know that these are more like ethereal, abstract questions about like the future, and put on my Phasers the Sun and Star Trek, Warp of Speed, whatever. But I really want to make sure that everybody that is listeners of this show, which most people don't have the background that I have or you have or Kyle has. They're just coming in and start listening to news and say number go up. And it's like, what does a future look like when we have the tools to build something that we want to, that can be different, And so what does the world look like when it says we're going to have IP on the blockchain, and my creation, because now you're saying we have to physically do the thing. I have to physically mint the thing and protect my IP instead of as part of being the creation process. Is there some way organic that you think that it would work, that maybe the wallet, Para and Camp, they actually work together, that the creation process is actually already embedded with some sort of IP protection that then lives perpetually, even the edits, even you just a whole process from digital art to music to anything that's in the digital space to a live stream?
Great question. That's exactly the vision that we're building towards. You hit the nail on the head. So if you look at today's IP process, very archaic. You're spending significant amount of time and money dealing with lawyers to upload a piece of IP. What we actually want to do is embed that IP registration process directly at the application level. So if you're uploading something onto Spotify or YouTube, that actual tokenization of that IP can happen essentially as you log on with your Para wallet. And I think the other piece, at the end of the day, we want all this to be abstracted. We don't want anybody to know, dealing with the blockchain or tokenizing something. It's just register your IP, and then all that just happens in the background.
Right. Nitya, you have anything to add to that? Please.
Yeah, building on that, I think that we're really moving to a world where, like, I think if we looked at this like eight years ago, the notion of having having L2s that are focused on specific types of data or specific types of information was like this is something that has really kind of emerged and come to the forefront very recently. The way we think about this is that chains are effectively building their own economies, and Camp is really building the economy of information, of provenance, of ownership. And we think about, okay, how can we connect that to other chains that are maybe focused on completely different types of data or completely types of information. And so being able to still have this ownership and this identity layer that is your wallet across all of these different parts of yourself and parts of your identity is really where we think things are moving towards. And yeah, Camp being a really, really big part of that.
So you almost mean like almost logging in, like, you know how I log in on to a lot of apps just using my MetaMask right now. Just basically logging into the internet with my wallet, and then everything going forward is just that identity.
Exactly right. So right now, I don't know about you, but if I go to an app and I don't already have a username password, this is in Web 2, I'll usually use single sign-on. And it's nice. My
Yeah.
name gets filled in, my profile picture gets filled in. We think that attaching a wallet to that notion of Web 2 identity and
Yeah.
putting users in the driver's seat of what they share about their Web 3 identity and where
Yeah.
allows you to just have such richer associations with what that user's identity is. And it also allows users to have basically a built-in payment system every app they log into. And I think we're already seeing this with Camp, where users will log into the first application, have a funded wallet, and the second app they go to, that onboarding experience is super compressed because they already have a wallet that's funded and ready to go. And that's just by signing in with Google the way they would in Web 2.
Okay. Oh, here he comes.
Well, I
No
want to
finger
say
wagging
that
today.
I think there's very much a concept that's developing, which is how your wallet will become your new browser, where instead of like accessing the internet and going to Safari or going to Chrome or going to Brave first, you're actually going to access a wallet, a crypto wallet first, and that becomes your like access point and the identity point. Where then if you look now, most wallets in the bottom will have like a browser or internet kind of button there. And so that I think it's an inverse of that, where we've all been trained to access the internet through the browser and then put our information in after that, where that middleman in that middle part is being removed, where we're now being individually entering it through a wallet
Right.
identity, and in some ways, a more protected identity, right? There's a privacy aspect to that, all the things we're going into, but the basic concept is wallet first to access the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super interesting. I think I just lost my train of thought though. I had a question and I lost my train of thought. Damn it.
I was going to just add one thing, which is being able to really invert that is where I think crypto starts to, or blockchains start to really leapfrog the databases of Web 2. Because now I'm going into a new place, and I already have my IP, I already have my ownership to that new application. I'm already real, and I think that is some of the power of being able to, just prove ownership everywhere you go.
Okay, so last question for you guys, and then I'll let you guys go. But before that question, I have a statement. Just it's everybody who's listening to this now or in the future. It's these kind of conversations about blockchain and crypto that I'd like to have, and I think that more people that listen to this should have, because we do have a choice. And I think that there was once Satoshi made Bitcoin, and that going forward until now, and I think that we are very much in a fork in the road moment where we're going to go institutional and everything's going to be siloed. We're going to have AWS, we're going to have the institutions, we're going to be, the same way, and they're going to just going to extract your data. They're going to control the thing that you do, or there's going to be tools built that where you can control the thing that you do. Is they control the thing that you do, or you control the thing you do? That's your IP, that's your identity, that's the internet, Web3, and the future of that. Or we're going to allow Bezos or whoever or Musk or whatever to figure that out for you. right? And so I really like these conversations because a lot of people don't. Again, there was a divergence between the conversations we had even up to 2021, like you were talking about with NFTs and the marketplaces and the royalties that are being paid, and then all of a sudden they said, you know what, Blur is going to come out with a cheaper platform that doesn't play royalties. That's going to be cheap. That's going to be cheaper. Anybody could use it, and we're just going to say, you know what, screw the royalties. So that's where the meme coin, the meme NFTs were going, and that's where all the volume went. And then they kind of forgot about the artist there. And there is literally a choice. We're going to follow the cheaper, flashiest thing, or actually make choices that are going to protect IP, protect rights, protect data going forward. Last question for you guys. I had a question from I had a question from a listener yesterday. We started this blog, also called Cars and Crypto. I love cars. I've been driving around, just driving windy roads in my car the past month or so. And they said, where is the intersection between cars and crypto? What would you guys say to that as somebody who's controlling IP and somebody who's making a wallet?
I have an example actually. Going back to what I mentioned about IP being a very, very broad word, not only creative works, but also your data. In theory, you could basically attach, and Hivemapper and some other folks are actually doing this. Your driving data and your mapping data essentially is a form of IP that you could then sell to Google or whoever's building the next map. So that's one way. I think, yeah, just incentives around things that we've already seen, but rewarding the actual everyday man for contributing their data.
I'll go super philosophical.
I love it.
I think cars work because they're opinionated products. We thought about like, what do people need, and let's build every step of that, put it together, manufacture it. We don't sell cars with sets of different blocks that people have to assemble themselves together. Maybe someone does that, but the vast majority of people really don't. And I think we're moving towards an era where protocols are thinking about themselves as products. And I think this is like, we're kind of emerging to the, like, we don't put together our own like stagecoaches anymore. We like are selling cars, or we're selling products.
I like that. That's interesting. Drew, Nitya, thank you very much for coming on and chilling with us. Camp, Para Wallet, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you all for having us.
Thank you.
Kyle.
I think I have an example for the car question too,
Oh,
where
okay.
I mean, just building off of what both of them just said, where, the kind of future I could imagine is, right, with biometric data, imagine that is kind of embedded into a steering wheel. Once you get into the car and you grip the steering wheel, the front panel computer system pops up and it says, "Hi, welcome, Kyle," and it's my Para wallet. And now that's attached to all the dApps in the system there. If I click, Spotify, then it's running Spotify through Camp, and whatever I'm listening to in the car is now tracking everything. It's on my biometric data. It knows that, Kyle is driving, but say I share my keys with Matt, and then Matt gets in and Matt clips the gripping wheel. It can access Matt's, blockchain profile. I don't know. Maybe there's got to be some secure way that it's built in like that, where maybe I have permissions set up for Matt to access it or something like that. But I envision a world like that where, it's about making it easier for being a human in a lot of ways, like what technology does. And in that way, like with a Camp or a Parrot, or a Parrot built into the computer system, because all these computers are basically just supercomputers now. Or sorry, all these cars are just supercomputers, not just Teslas, but non EV kind of cars. Like
Yeah,
every
100%.
gas powered car is like a supercomputer now. And so yeah, I mean, that's what I'm envisioning. And to Nitya's point, like this philosophical thing of like this product, like, I was talking to an EV builder who I want to try and get on the show at some point too. He's building basically the rival of Tesla called Ampercity. I met the CEO while I was in Bitcoin Vegas last week, just while kind of sitting at a diner. outside the conference.
As you would.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of take those chances sometimes and just try to chat people up. Um, but he was essentially telling me about like how advanced electronic vehicles are in China, right? And this is you can read these headlines kind of all over the place about how they're like at least 2 decades ahead of us. And that's kind of what you're seeing is like the super computerization of vehicles. And blockchain, as Drew was saying, if there's not really a hive mapper in there that's tracking what you're doing, where I, as a human, can leverage that data and control that data rather than that data being used by an intermediary or being used by Ford or Chevrolet and then being sold and used against me, right? The whole part of this is just about taking sovereignty over what is actually yours. And um, if you take a look the listeners here, right, who people listening to this, we actually just posted another interview from Bitcoin Vegas on Saturday about a project doing a like video streaming app on blockchain. And one of the things that the CEO said there when I was speaking to him is he said the world of Web 2 has convinced people that they don't have value. And what Web 3 is trying to do is make them
Mm,
see that they have value and find ways to monetize that value.
yep.
Um, and I think that's a really good kind of point to just kind of settle on. And with Camp and Para is that that's kind of what they're doing, finding ways to incentivize IP on the blockchain, and make it easier with wallets like Para to access and as a creator to whatever splice my audio and sell different clips of it or access my IP directly in the wallet, that sort of thing.
So my analysis of so I think that's why well that's exactly why I made the comment earlier of we have a choice. Everything we mentioned today about like the car example, your example, even the Pair Wallet example can be done with centralized servers. It can be done with AWS, it can be done by Apple, it can be using your Apple ID. So you said log in with your Google address. All this can be done without either of those two. The conscious choice the consumer has to make is that they have to make a decision of how they want that data to be used. And again, that's like you said, they convinced everybody that Web 2 nobody had value, and then now Web 3 you have the choice. And now, are you going to use that choice? Because Web 3 can easily be turned into Web 2, and you just continue that, but in a centralized aspect. So, looking at these two projects, I really like when people are building something that is more, ethereal and more, philosophical as a basis of what I want to see the world look like. I am very skeptical of their ability to make that happen. I think that it will happen in one way or shape or form, but I don't know if it's going to be controlled by somebody. They almost seem like, in my opinion, and not to just to be critical of their projects because that's what I do here, is they're building a company that is trying to create an infrastructure to be purchased by a bigger company so they can roll that into their ecosystems so they can control it in a Web 2 fashion. Because I wasn't convinced that there was no censorship. That's not what she said in the whole thing. But I do like the idea of controlling IP and registering your IP as they front facing. I log into the internet using my identification. Again, once the government gets involved, you're going to need KYC, AML, and your ID to do that instead of a crypto wallet, which is where we're at now. We have that choice: a crypto wallet that's anonymous or your federal ID, and then tying everything you do to your user base. So
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, some of it is about thinking of like, okay, well, if you look at YouTube, right? That's just a single isolated, that's just a single app within the like alphabet universe, right? So if you're thinking about how to tackle this kind of IP stuff, well, it can start with a big idea like what Camp has, where within this Camp network, there could be a lot of different apps like a YouTube, a Google Drive, and all these things that make up the ecosystem there, and they can all complement each other and work with each other. Um, I think the Google Suite is a good analogy. Like, imagine if you owned everything within your Google Suite and you had control over it, and if one day Google just decides not to let you access it, well, there goes all the saved history I have on my YouTube channel. And like, if I was trying to learn how to build cars and I had saved all these videos of all these guys who are mechanics, I would lose all of that rather than, at least in some degree, being able to save and track things for myself and have control over those. I do understand your point of censorship resistance. Like, that's something you got to watch out for basically everywhere. And blockchains everywhere have tried to hide that. Sui is the perfect example that recently they just stepped in and asserted their ability to stop their blockchain, which again means it's not necessarily a blockchain. And so, yeah, I mean, it's. I think at this time too, there's a lot of room still in crypto and Web3 for these kind of big idea projects to exist, and to try and tackle some of this stuff. Camp in a lot of ways is the second iteration of what Story Protocol is trying to do, right? It's building off of what they're doing, and trying to do it um, at the DApp level rather than like even at the DApp and wallet level rather than like at the like user level, where that's kind of what Story is doing. Story's trying to go to individual users or individual projects and say, look, you could, or even to brands like going to Starbucks and saying, oh, put your IP on the blockchain, versus creating this network and this ecosystem for creators to go to, where everything in that ecosystem is built around IP. So say like I'm a Web2 person and I just want to start monetizing myself. Well, then Camp would be an ecosystem you could go do that, versus trying to individually kind of do all of that on Story. Yeah.
All right, moving on from Pair and Camp. Anything else that's on your mind since we're here going live for the last maybe 10 minutes here? Anything on your mind market wise?
Um, they're saying that the Fed's not going to increase the interest rates.
You
Which
mean
is-
increase or decrease or both?
They're saying they're what I read, what I've been hearing is that they're going to sit flat again,
They should,
which
absolutely.
is likely positive for the crypto industry.
Good.
There's just so much macro stuff that is just related to crypto. Like, how can you can't really ignore this Trump Elon battle. That basically affects everything in the economy. And it's kind of silly to see it playing out how it is. But crypto wise, like, I think we're going to be in for, I just keep thinking this, that we're going to be in for a harder summer than what people think. For example, I was just talking with my family this past weekend about how California is about to pass has already passed. There's a new gas tax that will be implemented on July 1st, where basically gas is going to go up more than $1 everywhere. It's already the highest in the country.
Shut up.
Yeah.
What? Wait, California. Let me get this straight. California, the land of $5 a gallon gas, is going to pass a gas tax for car gas, and it's going to go up $1.
Yeah. Yes,
Do
the
you
gas
guys
tax
just-
in
you guys
California
just
is
hate-
increasing. Effective July 1st, 2025, the state's excise tax will rise from 59.6 cents to 61 cents per gallon. Additionally, it's going to just raise prices.
That's only 2 cents tax, so 2 more cents. That's less than $1.
I understood it's going to cause more, just more increase around, because there's a lot of other factors too. But anyways, it's we were just talking about that, and that was what one of my uncles was saying, is that he predicts it's going to go up by $1. Like that, everything's going to be over $6.
That would be absolute totally detrimental to California ecosystem and economy.
Well, it's
That'll
not detrimental, but my point is that it's just, crypto is usually something that a lot of people are using to, at least retail, to like hedge or to like invest.
How
But
is that not
the
detrimental to the economy of California when you're paying $6 a gallon in the third biggest state in the union? Like,
because
that's crazy.
it's a big economy. That's why. Like it's obviously gonna affect people. Like I'm not saying that's not gonna happen. Um, but it's my point was trying to be like how it's gonna affect the crypto market, and it's not gonna be
Mm,
like what what's maintaining the crypto market is BlackRock and these big institutions that are just repeatedly buying Bitcoin and Ethereum now versus retail who is still largely missing from what's happening. So, and that's what I think. Like issues like this, the taxing will hit people will spend more. Will have to spend on rice and beans than
right,
Bitcoin. That's the point.
right, right. Yeah, I'm not really too sure about the summer, honestly. I'm really much more concerned about black swan events than the actual economy, because the actual economy is good. There's more people. The data that I saw today was that the money in the money markets is just ballooning. That's probably has to do with high interest rates and not wanting to take risk when you don't have to make a 4 to 5% off your money. That's the
Hmm.
whole problem with the bonds going up as well. If you can make 4 or 5% or even higher in a 10 year or a money market, it's like, why would you invest? I mean, just put it there, and that's great interest. And if you're beating inflation, that's the best store of value you can get for the safety
Hmm.
of the store of value. So, but there's a lot of capital being sloshed around out there, and I am just more concerned about the black swan. And the black swan, there's still three up there that we don't know what's going to happen. Number one, obviously, Ukraine, Russia. Number two, we have LA and the National Guard coming in. And if the military is then put in on the American people, we have a constitutional crisis. Um, which I'm not gonna I don't say lightly because I never use that word, but the United States military being used to police is something that I think could drastically affect the markets, and not maybe so much domestically, but absolutely internationally in their confidence in America. Which with
Yeah.
the current exchange rates, it should be a bullish sign for American investment from overseas. Anytime you have a weakening dollar to any kind of euro, pound, yuan, yen, whatever, you're going to see a lot of capital being pushed in. It's either foreign cars, it's going to be purchasing of American goods, it's going to be investments or whatever, because it's just cheap. And now, if you don't have confidence in America itself, and I'm not even talking about the economy or the dollar, but because the American purchasing power is still the greatest in the world, we still have a great population, we still have places to build, we still have labor. But if you don't have the confidence in America, then I'm starting to go, maybe that might be our black swan out there, and see how that goes. However, number did go up, and we are sitting at 107. So who knows, Kyle?
Yeah. It's uh I mean, you can never rule out these black swans. It seems like there's always one in every presidential uh term. Um yeah, I mean the crypto markets, I feel like things are, at least with like innovation and things like that. Um what you're going to continue to see is stuff like this with Camp and Pair, like trying to build new types of dApps. Um, but building off like that Bitcoin conference last week, like I don't think people should be building Bitcoin DeFi. Like I don't think, or like Bitcoin games, right? Like people want Bitcoin as a store of value. People don't want Bitcoin as like a transaction tool. That's kind of what I'm realizing. I used to think that, maybe it would be great to, have, yeah, Bitcoin as this like transactional tool, but what I think we want to see in the future is like if you're going to build like a game on Bitcoin or with Bitcoin, you're going to have to like uh build it where the gas is like a stable coin and then the reward is Bitcoin, right? Something like that, where you can't be spending Bitcoin in order to do it. That's not kind of what the market's going to react to. It's more and
Right.
more being viewed as this a store of value where people can keep their money. Um,
Right.
and as you said, like if you can beat inflation, that's like the best thing. Um, that's really the best thing. That's why the like classic 4 or 5% return of the S&P 500 is so important because inflation's usually been just under that.
Right.
Um, but now we're in this time, this really kind of tumultuous time of where those two are kind of even inflation. And then yeah, we have all these geopolitical issues. But again, there's never a time when there's not geopolitical issues. Like this is the world. Um, it's just how you
Yeah.
adapt and how you can move with it.
Yeah, I guess talking about Bitcoin really quick, and this it being a store of value, that is exactly what it is. And I think that the only people that are fighting against that are either are people who are not accepting the market, and the market has made their choice of what Bitcoin is going to be. The devs made the choice, the market made the choice, and it's just not used the way it is. And I don't care what Satoshi put in the white paper, peer to peer like China Cash, um, the market's going to decide. And the market has already decided that it's going to be a store of value, an ETF. It's going to be a risk on slash risk adverse asset at the same time, which is really weird. Um, meaning that it's still a risky asset because of the volatility, but also it's a store of value because when it's risky in the market, you put it there because or if the currency or the economy is bad, people are looking at it more as of gold. So it's this weird kind of new asset class that the market decided that's what it's going to be. And honestly, Bitcoin has been acting like that too. So, and the only people who's been fighting that narrative is people who have been clinging on to some kind of, I guess, orthodox scripture, if you will. That is
Yeah.
our show, I think.
Yeah. No, it's been a good one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, as you know, Kyle at dailycryptonews.net, Matt at dailycryptonews.net. Follow us, dailycryptonews.net. Go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and do the Daily Crypto News podcast. Make sure to subscribe, like us, click those 5 stars, leave us comments on Spotify. You can email us as the emails I just said. And you can comment and chat in Spotify. I'm sorry, in Substack, and keep a lookout for a couple things that are happening on the website right now. There's gonna be a lot of. Here's the thing, guys, and I just want to say I'm sorry to everybody. Is I know that the Daily Crypto News email is crazy. Either we have two choices. We have two choices on the newsletter. Either we publish to everybody, or we don't publish at all. If we don't publish at all, we have nobody that reads articles, only maybe 10 people. If we publish to everybody, then we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that read it. And so the choice is simple, even though I know the emails annoy you. But Kyle's gonna be putting out emails and podcasts from the Bitcoin conference. We have more coming out from Toronto in Consensus. Is it Consensus?
Yeah, Consensus Toronto.
So we have a couple more articles coming out from that. I think 4 more are still slated. We have the Inspirator, the crypto curator, Paul McNeil. He's writing some articles. We have a couple other authors that are writing articles, and of course our Daily Crypto News. And well, stay tuned. Kyle, peace.
Yeah. Talk soon. Later.